Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and delighted to have in the studio with us our good friend, Bryan Platt. He is the Executive Director for Jackson County Right to Life. And to kind of give us an update, we've been talking about it. We reported it on the news that the petition to stop your tax dollars from paying for abortions in the state of Oregon, that petition drive has been pulled. And why? Well, we'll find out. Well, I know why, and I'm pretty ticked off about it, but I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all are. I mean, first of all, there's been a lot of effort in this over a period of years. But as we'll see here as we go through this, Perry, I think there's more to it than that, and there's reason for concern. And it really transcends just the issue of abortion and the cause that we're involved with. I think it really gets to the heart of the citizens initiative process.
So explain what happened. You put together, it goes to the Supreme Court for review.
Okay, right? So I'm going to maybe digress a little bit more, if you don't mind. I mean, so last October, we had an initiative written. And the first step that the Secretary of State's office requires is that you get sponsorship signatures. And essentially what they're saying is we want to know that there's some, moxie to this thing, that we're not just wasting our time here and moving on. So you got to get 1,000 signatures, which we actually gathered a lot of during our national Planned Parenthood protest downtown Medford on that beautiful Saturday morning, the 23rd of October. Anyhow, so we actually ended up submitting something like 1,700 signatures. We only needed 1,000. The Secretary of State says, okay, you guys, you got enough backing, let's go ahead. And so we're going to give this to the Attorney General, and he's going to write a ballot title. So he takes what Jeff and his crew had written, and they go through it and they refine it in their own way, and they came up with a pretty decent ballot title. I mean, there really wasn't any, apparent issues with it. And so I think we have that on the screen, guys, if you can put it up. So this is what the Attorney General first came up with. And you always look at it and it's parsing of words and it's, just nuances and things like that. Does this thing, does it have enough logic? And I mean, does it say what we intended for it to say and whatnot? But specifically, if I can draw your attention, the people on TV can see this on the screen, is how they defined abortion. Okay, and it actually was very similar to what Jeff's intent was. And essentially, I'm going to get this sheet here. Abortion is defined as a means to terminate the clinically diagnosed pregnancy of a woman with knowledge that the termination by those means will cause, with reasonable likelihood, the death of an embryo or fetus. Okay, that's what an abortion is. It kills a baby. I mean, you can call it an embryo or a fetus, but essentially it's a baby. And it goes on, abortion does not include contraceptive devices or methods used to inhibit or prevent conception. Okay, that's the definition of an abortion. Okay, so anyhow, so the Attorney General's office gives us this ballot title and says this and that, and Jeff and the crew up there said, we can work with this. This is close enough to what we had intended, that this is a viable ballot measure. Well, not unfortunately. So then the process continues, and there is a time for appeal. Interested parties, and in this case, it was Planned Parenthood Federation, the National Abortion Rights Action League, and the American Civil Liberties Union, filed appeals on some of the language of the ballot title. And this is where things start getting a little discouraging from my standpoint, and I think it's something that people need to be aware of, and that is that the Supreme Court has no statutory time limit that they're obligated to go through this appeal process. Jeff had been tracking other ballot titles which suffered a similar fate. They were appealed, they went to the Supreme Court, and what he was seeing was that they were taking about 10 weeks to go through the Supreme Court for them to render an opinion. And in our case, it took 13. Now you say, well, 10 or 13, it is what it is. The trouble is we have this unmovable date of July 8th in which to get all the signatures together. And this late in the game, those 3 weeks were precious.
Yeah.
Okay, So now the Supreme Court says, okay, these are the issues that we have with this. We send it back to the Attorney General's office. Again, this is all statutory now. Okay, so now the Attorney General says, okay, now I've got to rewrite this, responding to the appeal and how the Supreme Court has said, okay, these are the deficiencies. And so they came up with this second ballot title, and if we can put that up on the screen, and this actually was rendered on April 28th, and now the prohibiting of public funds directly or indirectly for abortions, the top there says a result of a yes vote includes, okay, we're prohibiting public funds, and it includes some contraceptives and access to abortion. Now, those two issues, contraceptives, that's nonsensical. Okay, our goal is to prohibit abortion, which doesn't occur until after conception.
Right.
A contraceptive stops conception from happening. How can public funds that are designed to stop funding of abortion be applied to contraceptives? It doesn't make, I mean, it's biology 101. It doesn't make any sense. And reducing access to abortion, Perry, this has nothing to do with access. We've said all along, quite frankly, and because of other federal mandates and whatnot, that we can't stop abortion. All we can do is eliminate the use of taxpayer funding. So they said limits access to abortion. We limit funding choices, but not access to abortion. So that became problematic for us, because now we have a ballot that really isn't saying what we wanted it to say. It's April 28th. It now is subject to another 5-day appeal process, okay, and again, in which interested parties can say, we object to this or that. Then it goes back to the Supreme Court upon appeal. They have no statutory time limit to which they can render, and the time is gone.
Yeah.
So the time is gone. So that's kind of where we ended up with. And so we had a conference call with those of us that have been in a position of leadership with this particular petition. And the reality was there simply wasn't time to pursue this and have any expectation that we would be able to logistically amass 117,000 signatures, get them to the Secretary of State by July 8th.
Besides, had you accepted those changes, you would have compromised the integrity of the issue.
It was absolutely unworkable the way it was. Yeah. So the appeal was going to be extensive. Yeah. And so again, we were just out of time.
I don't think any of this is coincidence. I think, you look at it because of the process, and because on the Supreme Court side there is no statutes of limitations. This fell perfectly into the trap, so to speak, of delay, and then put you into this situation. And here's the other thing: had you accepted those, well, you couldn't accept those, but had you gone to the appeal and come back and maybe got what you wanted the petition to say, it wouldn't have left you with enough time to gather the 117,000 signatures. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the problem with that was you can't afford to have another failure.
I agree.
And so you have to back up and take a look at this.
Yeah. So
does this set any kind of a precedence what to do in the future?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of thinking going on about this, and I think for us, first of all, we're not going away. Right. Okay, there's a third time down the road. Right. I think the Lord's message is He wants more people involved. We've talked about this over and over. I listed on my bad points that we still were frustrated in that we had spent a lot of time between last October and now kind of paving the way. Now, having said there were bad points, the good points were we had tons of churches, I think something like 200 churches enlisted statewide that were prepared to allow us to go in and collect signatures for this. That's more by far than we ever had at that point in the process prior. So we were positioned well. Yeah. The trouble was just the timeline was so condensed. Right. But I think the Lord is saying, I want more of my people involved. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take a couple of weeks off and just kind of catch our collective breath and then look at the process again, refining the time process. I think that's where we haven't been accurate enough in order to make sure that this kind of thing, where you've got this really to me, it's an untenable situation with the Supreme Court not being bound by any time limits and whatnot. We've got to be able to get past that in spite of their willingness to procrastinate and maybe manipulate the
How
the
far
process.
in advance can you start the process prior to-
Immediately.
So you can go, and so even though this wouldn't happen until next July.
Well, yeah, it would actually be July of 2018. Okay, so we're in a 2-year cycle.
So it's an election cycle thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, all right. So you could start it now and have a lot more time to work.
Exactly, and we can actually get through all of these problematic areas with unlimited time and things like that, get our approved ballot title, and then we maybe sit down for a while with it before we even begin to gather signatures, because as you recall in 2014, we had problems, or excuse me, 2014, we had problems because we'd been doing it for so long. People were saying, gee, I don't remember if I signed that or not.
Yeah, so it gives you a little bit of a pause. Well, folks, look, I was very upset when I heard what come crashing down. And when you look at the process and you do the timeline, I think it's pretty clear that there's an enemy out there and doesn't want this. But we're going to, and Bryan and his crew are going to continue to go forward. We will do our part to keep you informed as this thing comes back around. Now, before I run out of time here, you have to appeal.
Well, we're not going to. The decision's been made. We're just going to start all over.
Okay.
Yeah, this process essentially is finished. The decision is there's really not much to be gleaned by going ahead and appealing this.
Right.
We've got some other strategies in mind. But Perry, one of the things that came out from this, and Jeff and I were talking about this last night, is the Planned Parenthood organizations, Columbia Willamette, and Planned Parenthood of Southwest Oregon stood to lose about $500,000 in abortion revenues if this ballot measure succeeds, gets to the ballot, and is approved by the voters. They have a financial interest in this, and we've talked about their financial interest in abortion over and over and over on this program. It's a frightening thing. And they have amassed their legal forces, and I think for us, we need to up our legal game.
All right, well, keep us informed, buddy.
You bet.
And we will keep you informed. And as this comes back around, we'll keep Bryan on the hot seat here and keep you informed and get more churches involved. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, thank you, Perry.
We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.